Okay, cool. Okay. So, outside of Sheila, and we fixed the issue with the email client. Who was able to do some of the preparation work this week? Yes, yes, yes.
I was reading, but not to check for that particular case.
Certain parts.
Yeah, certain parts.
Certain parts.
Cool. So I'm mostly interested in the part on the preparation, on watching the video of the preparation, the very last bullet, because we're actually going to watch a clip, and what we're going to do is we're going to start every class with a clip, and it's going to kind of set the tone for the class, right? And it's also a good idea. We do it as advanced students is to prepare yourself for the lesson itself. Meaning that you get here, and we kind of keep chatter to a minimum. I know at the beginning, it's a lot of more formalities, and then, especially in North America, we're very friendly people, so it's always like, hello, how have you been? Wonderful. How was your job? Great. Your children? Excellent. You got to cover the basics, but in reality, students of Kabbalah, the advanced students, we don't say much to each other because we already know each other very well. We grew up together, just like you, like all of you in this class. And then, we've been together for years. So it's very, we just acknowledge, hello, come in, we sit, and we prepare. Because most of the work that we're doing is internal type of work. It's and later, especially during the more advanced classes, we really go into more of that internality of the Torah. What's happening inside of you? What's your intention? And today we're going to kind of touch on that, especially because we're going to be discussing the books. So, so it's important that when you get to class, you if you can, get a little early, have a seat, open up, read something, start reading something, and trying to find what is my intention, right? And so I'm going to write that on the board because it's a cool thing. We're going to talk about it today, about intention itself. But the question of, so what is my intention? So it's a great kind of question to kind of ask yourself when you get in the room and you come to class. It's tricky though, right? Because it's like you come from traffic on I-4, or you come from your job. You've been pushing numbers all day. I dress down today. You'll notice, and I look a little kind of disheveled because my whole house is under renovation, and I was swinging a hammer all day, demoing, taking drywall off the walls and ripping tiles out and stuff. So I have a nice sheen of white covering every part of every inch of my house.
You look fine.
Thanks. So but immediately, and always in the back of my mind, I knew I had class tonight with you guys. But throughout the day, I had to ask myself, what is my intention? What do I? It's not necessarily a hope of what you want to get, which could be something that is almost in the form of intention. But really, you want to make sure that you're mentally, kind of internally prepared to receive the information that's going to be portrayed. So we'll talk more about preparation, but at a beginning, it's a good habit that we like to instill in all of you, because it's so important that actually our teachers in the Kabbalah said that you only attain in accordance to how much you have prepared. So to the extent that you prepare for something is to the extent that you actually receive. So, and it's so important for the advanced students that, let's say we have a big convention or a big event that we're going to do, all of us together, we prepare months before, and then even so, the week prior, we know that we're going to sit together for, let's say, 8 hours, and we're going to be going through all these lessons. We'll go over the materials of the lessons prior, and we'll fully understand it. So you're already imagining yourself in that state of what it's going to be like. You're already formalizing kind of the right kli, the right vessel, the right, I'll tell you the Hebrew word, it's called hisaron, which is a lack or a deficiency. In order to be fulfilled, you need a deficiency, you need a lack. If you don't have a lack, then you're already full. So I'll write the word down, hisaron. Hisaron. So you have to have the right deficiency, the right lack. Why do I even need the wisdom of Kabbalah? Why do I even need these books? Why do I even need to come to this class? And so by asking yourselves all these questions and really just trying to kind of internalize this lack or this deficiency, it'll help you to properly identify, and it'll be changing all the time, by the way, but it'll help you in that moment to identify, well, what is my intention? What do I hope to get out of it? What are my expectations? What do I want to do? And I haven't sent you guys the videos yet for the recordings of class 1 and 2. But as I was uploading them, I listened to a little bit of it and I realized that I talk really fast. So it's my goal to slow down a bit so that I can properly enunciate thoughts and you will be able to get it. So, but I'm showing you that. Why did I tell you this? Because I'm also, it's my obligation also to come with a hisaron, a right deficiency also. What do I hope to gain, or what's my expectation in this class? We've seen thousands of students come through our program, and really, you're not just another face. It's like you're a piece of my soul in a way, and so we're closer together in that regard. And so for me, it's a very important role to have, to be an instructor. I'm also not a teacher in the sense. We have a teacher. Our teacher is Rav Michael Lightman. Once you graduate this program, you go to study with him, meaning he's your teacher. I'm just an instructor during this brief period of time of introduction, so that to explain the fundamentals, the intermediate and the advanced things to you, cover all the bases, so you can then now navigate all the really advanced stuff. In accordance to your desire or your hisaron, or your deficiency, you will see that you will be able to capture or grow or develop as quickly as you would want to. Because there's also no coercion in spirituality. It's a thing, it's a rule with the Kabbalists. There's no coercion in spirituality. You hear it all the time. And what that means is that no one can coerce you to do anything. No one can coerce you to open the book. No one can coerce you to prepare for class. No one can really force you to do anything. So it's really up to you. So the whole spiritual path, the whole ladder of degrees is in your hands. But what the Kabbalists tell us is that if you don't have a right hisaron, or a right deficiency, or the right lack for a thing, then there's no fulfillment. And that's why, and today we're going to talk about it also about what happens if I have no intention, or I can't properly find what my deficiency is. Or what if I'm reading these books and I don't understand a thing, and I spend countless hours trying to understand them? All that we're going to cover today, and it's a phenomenon that we'll see when you first approach the study, and in working with texts, classes, and a teacher, what that framework does for you and how it helps you to build this thing called a hisaron, or a deficiency. So we'll see how it kind of evolves. And I will give time for questions. I did kind of this pre-thing before we started, just to really solidify the importance of preparing for class. And it can be, and I'll be honest with you, all of us fall short, and it's almost very difficult in today's world, how we live with the children, with the job, with this, to find time to be able to like really prepare for a thing. But the same way that when you're gonna bake something or cook something, you prepare everything, you know all the ingredients beforehand. It's kind of the same here. You want to, if you really want to get the most out of this study, prepare for class. You'll see how much you prepare is how much you gain. Okay. So let's watch a little clip. Today is about Kabbalistic books and the light that reforms. The first few classes really is the fundamentals. That's why they call it fundamentals. And one of the fundamental things that Kabbalists have, it's actually one of 3 tools that Kabbalists have to advance, are the books. And they're super important, and they're really necessary for your advancement. And today we're going to talk about how we relate to the book. What is the book? Is it just paper and glue, or is there more to it? And so today we're gonna cover the Kabbalistic books and the importance of them. And it's interesting because some people you see as they advance and as they study, some are more drawn to the books. Some love to read. Some want to memorize this whole thing. Others are more into the social aspect of Kabbalah, the connection portion, intermingling with others. while others maybe just like the live lessons, or they're more auditory kind of listeners or learners. So they don't necessarily read as much. So I'm telling you this to don't feel bad if you don't read, right? It's okay. You're still advancing. You're moving forward. But the books themselves, everything we talk about in all of our advanced classes it's nowhere from like I made it up. Like our teacher, he doesn't make up anything. It all comes from the books, and we only use the books as our exclusive sources for gaining information. And we'll cover that tonight. So let's start with a little clip. It's a cool clip. I can tell you guys a little story afterwards about breaking the idols. But let's hear this. And by now, it's by class 3, it's obvious, like I said, that this is our teacher, Rav Michael Leitman. He studied with Rabash. He received all of the materials, all the books, everything from his teacher. So he's our teacher. So it's clear that all the clips we use, everything is from our teacher, a Kabbalist who truly has already experienced, worked in the with the upper forces. He understands all these things. So we work with Rav, but also, and we'll cover in a few lessons about the role of the Rav. I think it's in one more of the advanced things about like what is his role in this whole ladder of degrees, and why do we need a teacher? What's important about it? But I'm happy to hear some of you saying already that you've tried to like navigate the wisdom alone, and that you were unsuccessful, that you needed a teacher, you know. And that's why for us, we all kind of get that learning early, and we see, you know what, I need a guide. I need someone to help me navigate this stuff. So let's hear from Rav, and this is the clip that we're going to use for preparation for this week. It's going to kind of set the tone. So really, try to absorb what he's saying. I'll start it over. Give me a minute.
Spiritual. How can one believe in some object in an imaginary world that has spirituality? After all, it's specifically written. Do not make yourself an image, an idol. And how can you believe in some object that has some kind of force? How is it possible? First of all, what did Abraham do? What was the first action? To break the idols. There's no such thing. There's no stars. There's no statues. Nothing. Israel is above the signs and the symbols and the anything like that. There is nothing else other than the upper force, which is the only thing that I can come to with my intention. Only. All the rest are only so that I will exist in corporeality and in order to develop an inner connection with godliness. Only the intention.
So you see, the intention is the most important thing. It's everything. And later, the work that a person does in the intention throughout the study, this is what you'll see, where you can use it as kind of a guide, a marker almost, to see how did you remember, let's say, even that basic thing. Did I even think about the study? Did I even think about Creator? These kind of basic things, it's all becomes this kind of internal work that a person does. And I don't want to go too far about internality because it's a little bit more advanced than where we are now. We're really at the beginning. And so we'll get there, right? So who remembers what we talked about last week? Who remembers? Anyone? What did we discuss? Seems like 1,000 years ago, right? Perception of reality. Good. Do you need more of these cookies for you? The pumpkin ones? Did these guys take your cookies?
No, I ate some.
No? All right.
Everybody's cookies there.
I told her.
No, I have some. There's a whole box of them back there.
Okay.
5 worlds.
5 worlds.
Masach.
Good. Okay, so let's start. Let's do a small recap. Where is this map? There it is. Let's do a small recap. Okay, definitions. A desire to receive, Who remembers? What's a desire to receive? What do they want to receive?
Pleasure.
Pleasure. Okay. Desire to receive pleasure. What is the desire to receive pleasure? Who is it?
The desire to receive pleasure for the self alone would be the ego, basically.
Okay. An ego.
The opposite, which is the desire to bestow would be fear.
All right. So it's like the creature. The creature is a desire to receive pleasure. That's how we're hardwired. That's where we're programmed. The whole system of creation, everything that's outside of us that we perceive, like this whole world, the stars, the skies, you name it, all of that is based off of a desire to receive, because that's the only thing that was created, was a desire to receive pleasure. Okay? All of the degrees, the still, the vegetative, the animate level, all the degrees, all are based off of a desire to receive pleasure. It's funny, I'll tell you a story about that, that we assume that, that it's really just a human trait, that we want a lot of things, and that we really enjoy things. But there was a story of our teacher with Rabash, his teacher, and he would say that there was a cow that was there, and he would say, "Look at the cow," and they would give the cow and bring the cow this fresh hay, but I mean really the good stuff, not the dry stuff, but like really fresh kind of hay. And you could see that the cow was like shaking in anticipation of the pleasure that it was going to receive from this grass, and it could smell it. And it was like I'm telling you, and Rabash and Rav were sitting and they were talking and they were looking at this cow and they were like, "Look at it, how driven everything is by the desire to receive pleasure." Even a cow. And I'm telling you, it was like shaking, couldn't wait to eat and enjoy. This fresh grass. And so we see really the whole system, the whole of creation is built off of a desire to receive pleasure. This is kind of what we see outside of us. But then at the same time, I'm a desire to receive pleasure, so my whole perception is dictated off of my five senses and the information and experiences that I've gained as I grew and as I developed. Does anyone remember what a reshimot is? It's plural form, so it's reshimo without it. Say it again?
Spiritual remembrance.
Spiritual remembrances or a reminiscence. It's something that flutters or rises within me. It's that kind of a remembrance of where I have been. Let's put it like this. Of course, we use it in the sense of from above downwards when we descended. Not like a deja vu, like I was here last week or something, but I mean, it's like, because you won't feel it in this way. When the Reshimo arrive and you're like in a new state or a new degree, it's not, you don't really, not yet anyways. When you're a Kabbalist and you've attained the higher worlds and all this, you know specifically where you're located on the ladder, what you're doing. But the point is this, is that all of that information that you traversed from above downwards, from the descent of the worlds, when you were in Ein Sof, and then you descended into this world, all of that is inscribed in your spiritual genes. It's like in your spiritual DNA. So meaning that the information is inside of you. So you have to create an inner change in order to reactivate and re-navigate the same path that you used when you descended. So the Kabbalists call it reshimot, these spiritual remembrances, which really just come to us in the form of our next degree or our next state. But of course, we describe it as a remembrance because of the from above downwards, like when we descended. Now we have to use it from below upwards too. So it seems like we have already been there, but because like sometime in the past or something like. But in reality, it's not about time. It's the fact that you've already gone through this process, but now you're going through it oppositely. Now you're going from below upwards. You're returning to complete adhesion with Creator. And how do we do that? Through the law of equivalence of form. If two things have the same qualities, they're the same exact thing. If we value the same things, if I love the same things, then we're closer. If I hate or despise the not the same things, but opposite things, if he hates what I love, then it separates us. And so this is how we measure closeness and remoteness in the spiritual world. It's in similarities of properties or qualities. So if I acquire the clothing of the qualities of the Creator, love, bestowing, altruism, all of this, if I acquire those qualities, the qualities of the Creator, then I merge with Him in the sense that now I can perceive Him, I am one with Him, and He is revealed because we have the same qualities. And it's the same within the group of Kabbalists or the people that work together. We merge together by our similarities in qualities. But these are spiritual qualities. These aren't physical ones. You see, I like gluten. Karen can't eat it. So, so you'd say, oh, this is a thing. But it's a corporeal thing that separates us. We only connect on a spiritual degree between us. And we'll talk more about connection between people down the road. But for now, we understand that this is how the upper system works. Screen. A screen is a masach. Today we're going to talk more about the screen. A masach. Masach is a screen. What is a screen or a masach? Anyone?
Receive in order to bestow.
Ooh, and what did you say?
Intention.
Intention. Okay, very nice, guys. So it's a screen which is in the form of an intention, and its qualities are to receive in order to bestow. Because I have the vessel, my deficiency, my hisaron, my kli, I have the kli, and when it's plural, we call it kelim. So I have my kelim, which is my vessels of reception, and I cover it with a masach, which is my intention. And so my desire to receive pleasure for myself, my egoistic traits, I now cover it with an intention to receive in order to bestow, which is an anti-egoistic, action. Okay, it's against the ego, it's anti-egoistic, right? So, and this sets off other things that we'll talk about during the second semester, but for the most part, we need to understand that this is what masach is. It's a screen. But it's not a screen that, that kind of separates, but rather it's like a membrane. Like a filter, that's a good way to put it. It's a filter, like a screen porch from a porch or something. It has holes and entry points. But later we define exactly what the masach is. Later we even enter the math that is involved in how much can I bestow, how much can I receive, how much can I not, how much do I have to reject. All these calculations are in this book, which is what we talk about in the second semester. I can only bestow, I can only receive, now we're receiving, let's say, 100% for myself. But when I acquire a screen now, I'm receiving for myself 99%, but the screen is at 1%. And then later we see how this number starts inverting. Okay, but it's a screen. And the intention is tied to that. My intention is the thing itself that kind of dictates the screen, which asks myself that question is, what is my intention? Am I just receiving the pleasure for myself? Am I gobbling up all the cookies? Or do I realize that there is a giver of the cookies, but rather more so the giver of the pleasure, which is the Creator? Because on top of this is a big arrow of pleasure, light that He wants to fulfill you with. Okay, so this is the fundamentals of last week. Any questions? Quick ones on the subject, because we have tons to cover. Yeah?
Yeah, I have a question from the beginning. Say there is a lack, like something. What I try to understand is the lack that I feel is the lack that I have right now. But when I become in unity with these guidelines, then there's no more lack. It's complete. It's perfect. Is that correct?
The question that you have is, what happens to my desire, to my egoistic desire to want to receive when I acquire bestowal? because now I'm not receiving anymore, I'm giving. So if I'm a giver, how can I be a receiver? And what happens to the vessels of reception when it acquires the ability to bestow? Because now it seems as if it's opposite. Because with what will I give? If that's ultimately the question that arises after this is, if I'm only a receiver, then how can I give when I have nothing to give?
We receive it.
And so what you're describing is something called the 4 phases of direct light. It's something that we cover specifically in class 7, which is class 1 of the 2nd semester. Which, guys, this is just the first, something called Bechinot. It's the first spiritual occurrence. I realize I'm a receiver. Okay? Number 2 is I acquire masach, right? And then we go on and on and on. But ultimately, it's a process, a spiritual process, which later becomes the fundamental building blocks of reality itself. Yud He Vav He, the Havaya, the whole of the system of creation, all his, and I'm saying his as creator with a capital H, all of his glory and appellations and everything, the upper system is built off of these 4 phases of direct light, which we'll cover later. So right now we're kind of in the definition stage of there's a Kli that exists. This is the Kli, this is you. Later you acquire something else, and then later we tie it all together and say, now that you understand all these things, this is the process that you will undergo, and then we go on even further. Because this is through this process of the revelation of one's nature, the acquiring of something against or opposite of someone's nature, is what actually creates the whole process of the creation of the upper worlds.
So I assume that when you're talking about bestowing or receiving, you're talking about spiritually, not necessarily
Physically, yeah. Yeah, it's a spiritual giving, but then at the same time, believe me, there's so much later you go into all these sorts of kind of questions. It's like about how can I bestow in this world if it's really like a spiritual thing and I haven't attained yet? What do I do? And with time, what we see is that there's even more things. Like my friend's corporeality is my spirituality, in the sense that how can I bestow to him in corporeality? I give to him. He loves chocolate, so I bring him chocolate. I give him gifts. I do things for him. I love him. I care for him. But in a way, there's a whole world inside of me that I'm making it spiritual. And later we define more. We open it up more, meaning because at the end of the day, the Kabbalist lives in both worlds. He doesn't leave this place. He lives here. So how can he do spiritual actions in a physical, tangible kind of like material world that seemingly doesn't have the properties of something that we would define as spiritual? And then later we go further into it, but ultimately we see that everything that's bestowed or given is spiritual.
Is there a balance thing? Because some people are constant givers and then they use themselves up and then they're starting to receive. I mean, there must be a balance in there too.
Yeah, later we cover it, and pretty much it's like at the beginning it's I receive in order to receive. So I receive for the sake of receiving. I take. Later there's receiving in order to bestow, where I receive, but now I give, because a person can't just give. And that's why I'm glad you clarified it, that it is a spiritual thing, because it's not physically. Because all of a sudden, now you say, oh, I must be altruistic, I must be like Creator. You empty your bank account, you go out on the corner and you start giving all your things to everyone. What are they going to do? Take all your stuff, and then you have nothing. And then it's like, because this whole world is governed off of reception. And so it's an internal thing that's occurring, because ultimately you can't, you must receive in order to bestow, which is why you have to, and this is kind of the later phases of it. So you must receive. You can't help but receive. You must, because it has to, in a way, almost pass through you. And you become then the conduit of connecting the upper world and the lower one, and then you're doing actually like a huge, great work of bringing like all His glory into this world, and that's really the role of the Kabbalist, is to connect the lower world and the upper world. He connects them both. Okay, anything else on last week? Okay, so the book.
Just double checking, Reshimon is deficiency, right?
No, that's Isam.
Okay.
Reshimot is spiritual remembrance or reminiscence.
Gotcha.
The Reshimot, and Reshimot is plural. Okay, so we're talking about all of them. Kind of like I drew it, like kind of looking like a DNA one time, right? With all the little dots. The spiritual Reshimot. Okay,
Gotcha.
it's like the spiritual genes that are inside of it. Okay. All right, I'm erasing it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you mean by the spiritual gene?
Gene. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because like we're talking about something spiritual, but then a gene seems like it's something that's physical. But the term gene, like if we use it as an example, it pretty much says that if I look at you and your makeup and I zoom in, like I super zoom in all the way down into like what are you made out of on the DNA level, I'll see that the very like fabric of your physicality and your what you are and everything, your building blocks is based off of genes or DNA. You're like the basics of it. So our spiritual DNA or our spiritual kind of genes is the same story. The basics and the fundamentals of it is based off of these kind of spiritual reshimot. That it's like a gene, like a little thing that hasn't yet become spiritual. It's just kind of like hey, now I know where to go, and then if I can open it up more, then it becomes like my next like incarnation or my next. And I don't mean physically, I mean spiritually. My next stage or evolution. My next degree. Yeah, so that's spiritual reshimot. Okay, so guys, we're gonna read a lot today. You know why? Because we're talking about books. So today's about books, so we gotta read, right? Like, so let's go to page. Let's go to page 23. Okay, so for starters, if we're going to talk about books, let's distinguish a couple things. For one, the simple fact that you have a book in front of you today wasn't always this way across all the past generations. Why? Because there was something that wasn't invented yet called the modern printing press. The modern printing press allowed information to be dispersed widely, which means that we have books all over the place. But back in the day, way back in the day, to have a book was a huge thing. And the fact that you had a spiritual book, or like the Zohar or anything in your house, forget it. Like you were already righteous just because you had the book, right? Oh, that guy has a Zohar in his house. Oh, he's a righteous. He's already like somewhere up very high. Because for one, if you couldn't, you had to pay a guy to write it down, to transcribe it for you. Like, I mean, it was very challenging to actually get a book. And forget it, if it was scrolls before that, even more so. So what I'm going to do is, though, we're going to read, and I'm going to show you kind of a cool clip also after we read. But what we need to understand also about this is that now we're in a different situation than when we were historically. Now we have books all over the place. So it's very challenging to distinguish what is accurate, what is right, what is wrong, what is not it, right? What is the truth? So for starters, we need to know that why this book? Why is this book authentic? For one, it's because Kabbalists wrote it in a special language. But prior to me explaining the language, we need to know that they read it from something called attainment. So if I attain a thing, that means I've acquired it. Like I know it, it's on me, it's like in me, you know? So Kabbalists wrote these books from a degree of attainment. And we define attainment as already attaining something spiritual, which means that if you're in this world and you write books, ask these guys to give you some water. If you write from the degree of this world, then then there's still room for confusion because you haven't acquired the upper system. And I'll explain more through a drawing that I'm going to do, but first let's read abstract names. And we're going to read it all the way to and so on. So the whole thing. Who's going to read it for us?
What page, 23?
Page 23, abstract names.
Many believe.
Oh, you reading?
Yep. Many believe that all the words and names of the wisdom of Kabbalah are kind of abstract names. This is so because it deals with godliness and spirituality, which are both time and space. But even our imagination has no hope. For this reason, they have decided that surely these matters speak only of abstract names, or even more sublime and exalted than abstract names, as they are completely and from the outset devoid of elements that are imagined. But that is not the case. On the contrary, Kabbalah uses only names and appellations that are concrete and real. It is an unbending rule for all Kabbalists that anything we do not attain, we do not define by a name and a word. Here you must know that the word attainment implies the ultimate degree of understanding. It derives from the phrase that thy hand shall reach. That means that before something becomes utterly lucid, as though gripped in one's hand, Kabbalists do not consider it attained, but understood, comprehended, and so on. Keep going.
Yeah, we read it last week. Yeah, we sure did. Abstract names. Wisdom of Kabbalah doesn't deal with abstract names. It's like any science with specific like nomenclature for things. If this is what it is, it has a name, and we call it that, but only one who has attained it can call it that, in a sense, meaning they can define it. So then others that also have attained the same thing, they define those same experiences or the same things that the other Kabbalist has discovered, they call it by the same thing, because they're ultimately discovering the same thing. But how can you describe something from an upper world that isn't physical, that is more sensational or experiential? How can you use human or lower world vocabulary to describe it? Like, how do you understand, how do you explain concepts to people like emotions? Like, how can you explain what an emotion is to someone who, like, to a robot or like, to, I don't know, like these sci-fi shows, they have like these androids or whatever. They don't understand like human, emotion and these sorts of things. Because how can you describe it or program it into a thing when it's something that someone feels or experiences? And so this was the challenge that the Kabbalists had at the beginning, where they would acquire or attain, and they would experience something that's in an upper system, like up here, like let's say the moon or the sun or the mountain. They would call it with things from this world, but they would feel it, and let's say the sensation was called sun. So then now another Kabbalist also attains, and he feels this thing. He also describes it as sun. And then equally between them, they have a vocabulary, a whole language that we're going to debunk between us throughout the whole period that we're together. You'll learn this language, where ultimately they're describing things from an upper system, but using words from this world. Okay, so let's say that they're using something called the sun. Well, then you immediately imagine the sun, because we all kind of know what it is. But the difference is that in the upper system, what's happening up there, and the way that the upper system and the lower system works, is in a cause and effect relationship. So in the upper system, it's the cause. Everything, it's the causal level. Everything occurs in the upper system, but the effects of the upper system are viewed below. So when a Kabbalist is above and he has this sensation of something like a sun, there's an effect below in this world which is more than likely not in any possible way related to the actual sun. But they had to describe it, and they had to give it a name. And so they started to write the books this way. So much so that, imagine like, and I know you all are drawing, but look at the screen for a moment. You see colors, images, but like Jose, he's a programmer. he knows that behind this is zeros and ones. That all of this that we're seeing is pixels, and even further in, if you zoom in, it's all zeros and ones. That's some computer program, it's the code, and all of a sudden it displays something else on this screen. So there's a code behind what we view with our senses. So you can say that in the upper world, it's where the code exists. But yet in our world, we see the effects of it. So we see things like you would see it on this screen where it displays. But rather, it's really occurring in the upper system. And so all of these things that they wrote about in the books, like the moon, some mountain, the people, they're describing things. They're actually not describing things of this world, but things of the upper world. And so anyone who approaches the text and begins to read it immediately uses his own vessels of reception or of this world, and he begins to corporealize the text. And he immediately begins to draw attachments or ropes to things he already knows, or perhaps to things that are in his perception, or try to take them in a literal sense. But what we understand is that the Kabbalists were actually describing the causal degree above it. They were describing what is happening in the upper system. And this whole process, the way that the books were written, they were written in a special language. And this language is called the language of roots and branches. And it's because what it's describing, when we say root, the root is on the causal level, in the upper system. But the branch level is down here in this world. So these books are written seemingly as if they're discussing the branches, but what they're really describing, the code behind them, is the roots. So they're describing the spiritual roots of a thing, of a feeling, of an emotion. And all the books are actually not describing anything in this world. They're only describing sensations, spiritual feelings, internal spiritual sensations and, let's say, attainments. So what ends up happening is that because they're specifically describing an emotional kind of degree, they had to use a language of this world where they describe things from this world. But they're really in a specific way that it's written, where those who understand the code or understand how the books are written are able to then understand what is occurring in the causal level. So much so that when a person actually acquires spirituality, he can begin to use the books specifically as blueprints to that upper world. And this breaks down all the way into not just the word, but the letters within the word. And each letter itself is actually a feeling and a sensation. But what has ended up happening is that this occurrence of the fact that there's some sort of deeper kind of mathematical or alphabetical kind of like code, and we should approach it from that degree. What we see is that it's caused a lot of confusion because most of the books that were written are written from this degree, from the affected degree, when really you must approach the understanding of the roots from the upper degree. So what I'm saying is that that's why we Kabbalists rule out sources that are not, let's say, accurate, that are written in abstract names. Okay, which is why they use specific books that are written in the way that they've already tested, that know that it's effective. Okay, so let's read a little bit more. We're going to read now on page 25. It's the next page. Just turn the book. And now we're going to read about the law of roots and branches. So where do we leave off? We're going to go one by one. Each one is going to read a paragraph. I hope you got your reading glasses. But we're only going to read down to to the lower world. So we're going to read 4 paragraphs. Okay, so let's not have to decide readers every time, so let's call it out now. Sheila, who next? You want to read? Okay, and then we'll just go in a circle like this. Okay, all right.
Capitalists have found that the form of the 4 worlds, namely Absolute, Berea, Yetzirah, and the Shia, beginning with the first highest world, is called Absolute, and ending in this corporeal, tangible world called the Shia is exactly the same in every item and event. This means that everything that eventuates and occurs in the first world is found unchanged in the next world below it too. It is likewise in all the worlds that follow it down to this tangible world.
There is no difference between them, but only a different degree, perceived in the substance of the elements of reality in each world. The substance of the elements of reality in the first, uppermost world is purer than all the ones below it, and the substance of the elements of reality in the second world is coarser than that of the first world, but purer than all that is of a lower degree.
This continues similarly down to this world before us, whose substance of the elements in reality is coarser and darker than in all the worlds preceding it. However, the shapes and elements of reality and all their occurrences come unchanged and equal in every world, both in quantity and quality.
They compared it to the conduct of the seal and its imprint. All the shapes in the seal are perfectly transferred in every detail and intricacy to the imprinted object. So it is with the worlds, where each lower world is an imprint of the world above it. Hence, all the forms in the higher world are meticulously copied, in both quantity and quality, to the lower world.
Perfect. So what this is telling us is that everything is occurring in this upper system. There's no possible way that a lower degree can affect an upper degree. Do you see the arrows in which direction they're pointing? Everything is affected from the causal level, from above downwards. The way that the worlds are imprinted and they're created is that the upper system, the higher the world, the more it manages the rest that's occurring below it. So someone who's in the world of Asiya can already understand or work in the world that's below him. He already can affect the world below him. Let's put it like that. But the point is that the only way that anything can be affected or worked upon is from the degree above it, from the causal degree. So to say that let's say that like the world we see today, that we see, global crises, hunger, famine, political unrest. It's often seen that perhaps from this degree we can affect that. We can go and feed all the children, but then they're going to need T-shirts, and then they're going to need houses, and then it'll continue this way. Meaning that we can't really change any of the effects that we're seeing in this world from this degree. We're unable and incapable because we're in the same degree as it. And so, but rather there's a root to it above that's affecting those things and making those things occur. So in order for us to make any change in any of the worlds below it, we must approach it from a degree above it. But even then, a Kabbalist who already acquires and already enters the upper world, he already knows the effects of it because he knows the cause and he knows the effect that it's occurring. And lots of times we kind of think, when we think cause and effect, that we think it's like, okay, I throw this cup on him, he's going to get wet, right? It's like there was a cause, the cause was I threw it, and the effect is he's wet. But it's not so much like action-based in the sense that we think like, A, makes B occur. It's not that. It's a different way of how things are kind of laid out in the relationship between the upper and the lower. Meaning that this is kind of an imprint of the upper world in some way. It's kind of like we read. It's like a seal. It's an imprint. But the lower the world, the coarser And when we say coarser, we're going to use this word later when we describe the masach. We go further into the masach. But the coarser, what's coarse? Rough. It's not. It's jagged. It's rough. It's not nice. And then the higher, the smoother it gets, the more refined. The more it's cleaned. Eventually, you can see like how does these diamond guys clean the diamonds? They shine light on it and they find where the dirt is, and then they clean it this way. So this is precisely this process that we're undergoing, and you'll see how this example, even by the end of class, will serve even more true about what we're doing here. So write it down. No, write down your question.
Well, related to this.
Write your question down, good sir, please. I have to do it, guys. It's a must. And what's cool is that actually I only have to do that like twice, because then eventually it's like a class norm that everyone understands it. That hey, you ask questions during the Q&A session, only because it derails, and then we gotta stay on the track, and then we have time for all that. Okay, so let's go through the definitions for this portion. Root. It's the cause. So the root is up here. It's in the upper world. This is the root. Okay, so when you hear the root, it's talking about a causal level, while the branch is the effect. It's what's happening in this world. So what's the world of roots? It's the spiritual world. What's the world of branches? The corporeal. So what's the language of branches? It's a language that describes the spiritual reality using the names of corporeal branches. Okay? I'll give you guys a moment to write that down. And then I'm going to add to this drawing. All right, Alfredo, you know what you're going to do? You know what you're going to do after this, during this week? You get a little bag, right? And you make it your Kabbalah bag. And you put your book in there, and you put your notebook in there, and you put your pencils in there, okay? And and then you really make it a special bag, a good one, because it's like it's a special thing, and then you put it in your car. And then you'll never not have your materials for class, You'll do that.
Yeah, I got a piece of paper right here that she was so nice to give me, but I just wanted to take a picture.
Yeah, but where's the picture gonna live in the digital space in your phone? You'll never scroll back to it, And this paper will get lost in your back seat of your car, Get a notebook, write stuff, and I'm telling you, it's good for you. Make a definition of term. Also, Karen asked, should I write in the book? And the answer is absolutely. You should, when we're reading things, you can make notes on the sides of the book. If you look at our teacher's book, Rav Michael Leitman's book, when he was studying with Rabash, it's covered. Like, there's no more room to write outside. And Rabash's book was the same way. Anytime you hear an interpretation of one of the Kabbalists that says something and a clarification on it, make notes. This word means this. This is your scientific notebook. This is your place. I recommend pencil. Why pencil? Because you are changing, and your understanding of what you're writing will also change. Rabash would read something that he wrote down on the side of the book. He would read it, and then this is Rabash. This is our teacher's teacher. And then he would read it, and then he would say, "No, this is incorrect." And he would erase it, and then rewrite it. And because you see that you're also advancing, and as a result, your understanding of what it is now is totally different what it's going to be in 6 weeks after you guys are through with this process. So I'm telling you, get a good pencil with a good eraser and write in the book. Because actually there's a spiritual rule, not a spiritual rule, but there's a spiritual root to the book itself. So how do we connect this lower world with this upper world? We connect it And we can connect to it through the book. So the book itself is actually the spiritual root of a book is a mechanism that can connect you with the authors and with the thoughts and the sensations of the authors. It can connect you cross-generationally, across time, with the authors of these sources in these books. What they attained, you can also acquire through your connection through the book. But there's something else that occurs, though, is that I read the book, yet I don't understand what the book is reading, what the book is saying. So it's not so much the fact that I'm reading the book and I'm understanding it, but rather it's my desire to want to understand it that actually activates the book itself. It's that hisaron, that deficiency, that I want to know what the authors were saying. I want to know what he was feeling. I want to connect with what they're doing. That deficiency, that lack, is actually what causes the book itself to come to life. Okay, because it's connecting you with the authors of the book, and I'm going to add something about what else occurs in a moment. But so my intention on how I read the book is even more so also important. Because I ask myself, what is my intention? What am I reading this book for? So my intention, kind of a screen that I have of why do I want to read this? What's happening? How can I connect to this book? What is my intention for reading this? I want to connect to the authors. I want to perform some sort of action. But that action is my intention. So we see that there is the upper degree, the root degree, there's the branch degree, corporeality below, spirituality above, and there's a screen in the middle of it, which is my intention. Okay? Because my intention can dictate if I am in the lower world, if I'm just concerned with self-preservation and complete enjoyment for myself, or am I opposite? Now am I with the qualities of the Creator? Am I receiving in order to bestow? Now my intention is different. Okay? And as a result, I have a screen, and the screen is what can connect me with the upper. So the Kabbalists use the books to be able to connect with the authors. And so the fact that there's modern printing press now, because and there's books everywhere, and also you could say, hey, I have this book available digitally. Is this the same? And Rav, our teacher, has told us, no, it's not the same. Yes, use it, and he uses it also, and everyone uses it. And it's no big deal, use your iPad, your computer, read through there. But the spiritual root of the book itself is something very exalted. Because back in the day, like we said, it was very rare to have the books. And there's something special about taking the white and adding the black, okay? And it's more so, it's not so much about like, what do you mean? It's like there's white paper and you're writing black on it. What's behind this? The spiritual root of it is that white is kind of like the white light, like it's all Creator. But then now the black that we add is the oppositeness, and we begin to define what this vastness of white world that's in front of me, that my perception only allows me to see, like, let's say it's like kind of like a jello, right? Let's say it's like Creator is like all around us. He's like yellow gelatin, okay? Just because we don't see him doesn't mean he's not there, right? So I'm within the gelatin. So what I feel and what I occur as I'm discovering the gelatin begins to write words on the whiteness, and it begins to define and give shape to it. And this is what the book is. It's spiritually rooted in writing something where there was nothing. Which is why you should write in your notebooks. You should write in your books. You should read, because there's spiritual roots to these things that now seem so common for us to be able to actually read and write. which was not, it was a luxury, you know, cross generations. And the fact that we actually have the books is even more like, we just think it's like a regular thing. But for Kabbalists, they had one book, one teacher, one reader. And everyone would hear and learn with one book, because sometimes a synagogue or wherever they studied only had one book, you know, one Torah. Okay, so you have a very special book here. But honestly, the book itself is not holy. You burn it, right? No one would feel disrespected, because it's not the book yes, there's a spiritual root here, but it's your intention, your activation of it that makes it become that link, that spiritual link that connects you, who's below, with what's above. Okay? So it's the intention that activates the book itself. All right, let's read a little more. This is a long one. This is also on page 27. But no, not also. But this was written from. This is what the Rambam wrote, another Kabbalist. Conveyance from a wise Kabbalist to an understanding receiver. So let's, it's a long one. We're not going to read the whole thing. We're going to go all the way to quantity and quality. Where's that? That's already set. The next page after the gray block. Okay? Where did we leave off? We left off with you? Okay, we'll keep going in a circle like this.
And thus wrote the Rambam in his introduction to his commentary on the Torah. And I bring with true convention to all who scrutinize this book and all of the clues that I write in the secrets of the Torah. I resolutely assert that my words will not be grasped by any mind or intelligence, except from the mouths of a wise Kabbalist to the ear of an understanding receiver, such as Dan, Rav, Shem,
Chaim.
I am Vital.
Yeah, Chaim Vital.
Kim.
I can't even say the
Yeah, no,
first
go on.
language, so you're doing great.
No, you're doing wonderful. Sorry. Yeah. It's just it's important just with the names of the Kabbalists. Nothing is really important. You can call them Chaim. It doesn't matter. But just so you know, the CH in Hebrew is like a L'chaim. You know, you gotta fuck it up. You know. So Rav Chaim Vital.
Myra wrote in his introduction to the Tree of Life, and also in the words of our sage. One does not study the Kabbalah on one's own unless he is wise and understands with his own mind.
Their words are thoroughly understood when they say that no one must receive from a wise Kabbalist. But why the necessity for the disciple to first be wise and understanding with his own mind? Moreover, if he isn't so, then he must not be taught, be he the most righteous person in the world. Additionally, if one is already wise and understands with his own mind, what need has he to learn from others?
From the aforesaid, their words are understood with utter simplicity. We have seen that all the words and utterances our lips pronounce cannot help us convey even a single word from the spiritual, godly matters, above the imaginary time and space. Instead, there is a special language for these matters, being the language of the branches, indicating their relationship to the upper roots.
However, this language, though extremely suitable for its task of delving into the studies of this wisdom, more than other languages, is only so if the listener is wise in his own right, meaning that he knows and understands the way the branches relate to the roots. It is because these relations are not at all clear when looking from the lower upwards. In other words, it is impossible to find any reduction or semblance in the upper roots by observing the lower branches.
Quite the contrary, the lower is studied from the higher. Thus one must first attain the upper roots, the way they are in spirituality, above any imagination, but with pure attainment. And once he has thoroughly attained the upper roots with his own mind, he may examine the tangible branches in this world and know how each branch relates to its root in the upper world, in all its orders, in quantity and quality.
So while you read, what was your intention? What was your intention while you were reading this whole time? Did any of you monitor it? Did anyone think about it?
I guess what?
It's not I don't want an answer. The question is, and we're going to read another one next. This was part of the exercise. We read a whole thing. And what am I just want to read it. Here's some nice words. What is my intention? I know it's unclear at this stage. What do you mean intention? Like, just ask yourself, why am I reading this book? What do I want to connect to? What do I want to try to connect, with? And I'll go even further before we read this, and I'll tell you that. Let me see where it is. Okay. Now, what you want to try to connect to is something called the upper light, or the light that reforms. Okay, so let's write that down. The light that reforms. Why do we read the books? We read them to attract the light that reforms, the surrounding lights. And this is it's not a kind of a mystical, like a magical thing. It's science. It's the way the system works. It's built this way. That if, from my degree, I approach the text in the right way, with the right intention, that I begin to attract the lights that surround from the upper world. And it begins to affect me and work on me. Because I'm trying to connect to the causal level. I'm trying to understand the person who wrote it from his degree, those things. So in a way, it's like I'm drawing it close to me. Okay, not the thing itself, and we don't understand. Believe me, you could read the very advanced, even Zohar, right? And not understand a word. But the fact that you were trying or want to connect your intention and asking yourself, what is my intention? You begin to attract something called the light that reforms. And the light that reforms is actually the thing itself that begins to advance you. It begins to spiritually correct you. Okay, we're not going to go into today, what is it correcting? Why do I even need correction? None of those questions. All we need to understand is that there's a light that reforms, that attracts when we read the books, the Kabbalistic books, and with the right intention. And even more so, together. Okay, so now we're going to read the next one. So let's think about, what is my intention? Even if it's purely egoistic, I want that light. I want to receive that light. It doesn't matter. I'm telling you, believe me, we're not going to gain bestowal overnight. But you must have an intention. So let's read the next one, and then we'll, and just ask yourself that. And I'll tell you how important the intention is. Here, let me go back because I don't want you guys looking at this. I want you looking at me. So I'll tell you how important the intention is, that we will sit with our teacher. There's a Zohar lesson every day with him, by the way. We read Zohar. But like I just said, we read Zohar, meaning we sit for an hour reading Zohar. And he only stops to ask us, what's your intention? Come on, guys. If you don't have the intention, then there's no use in reading this. We won't advance. What's your intention? And we constantly are defining it, reminding ourselves, because you can begin to read it, and then you're like, okay, intention. You know, man, I got to stop at home and buy the fried chicken before I get to the house. and then it's like, okay, oh yeah, intention. It's like you see that you must do the internal work also. Okay, so we're starting. It's like we're learning how to box. You start with the jab. So the jab is, what's your intention? So let's try it when we read the next one. And the intention is everything. So this is item on page 373, item 154 and 155. And as you're turning your pages, I'll tell you a little bit more that our teacher says even. He says, the intention is so important that you don't even care what's written in the book. You don't care to understand the words themselves because you're activating it just by wanting to connect with it. So at the beginning, when you're incapable to hold the intention, there's some noise, there's some reading, but I'm holding the intention, okay? Then the more that I'm able to, the more I can begin to kind of connect with and let a little bit of what they're reading in, but it's still kind of connected. I can hear the words and this, because oftentimes, naturally, we want to corporealize things. We begin to read about things that sound like they're in this world, and images start popping up in our mind about this, because we're reading these kind of exalted texts that are written as if they're from this degree. So at the beginning, it's much more important to hold the intention properly than actually know what the book is saying. Okay?
Is it because we're matching the intention of the reader?
You know what you need is a piece of paper so you can write down your questions. This is why you need to bring that notebook. Come on, man, I'm just messing with you. But write the question down. What's your intention? We're about to start reading, but write the question.
I got my question. Getting more and more.
Okay, good. I'll make a good long list. 373. Okay, 373. Item 155. And by the way, this is, we'll do it 154. You should know that the most of the authors should know. Where is that? It's the first paragraph. Okay, so let's start with 154. We'll read all of 154, and we're gonna ask ourselves, what is our intention, okay? Well, let's just try to do something internally while you're reading, okay? So here we go. Item 154, we'll read the whole thing. Jose, you're up.
These words suffice for any observer to feel the essence of the wisdom of the Kabbalah to some degree. You should know that most of the authors of the Kabbalah books did not direct their books, but only to such readers that have already attained a disclosure of the face and all the sublime attainments.
We should not ask if they have already been awarded attainments. Then they know everything through their own attainment. Why then would they still need to their books of Kabbalah by other authors?
However, it is not wise to ask that question. It's like one who engages in the literal Torah, who has no knowledge of the conduct of this world with respect to the world, near soul of this world, and who do not know people's behavior and their conduct with themselves and with others. And also he does not know the beasts and the birds in this world.
Would you even consider that such a person would be able to understand even a single issue in the Torah correctly? He would overturn the issues in the Torah from good to bad and from bad to good, and he would not find his hands or legs in anything.
So is the matter before us. Even if one has been awarded attainment, and even at the level of the Torah of Atzilut, he will still not perceive more than relates to his own self. Yet one must know all three discernments, world, year, self, in their every incident and conduct in full consciousness to be able to understand the issues in the Torah that relate to the world.
These issues are explained in the Book of Zohar and the genuine Kabbalah books with all their details and intricacies. Thus, every sage and one who understands with his own mind must contemplate them day and night.
Okay. Who was able to hold the intention? How long were you able to hold it?
maybe less than a minute.
Well,
Same intention
Less
the whole
than a
time.
minute.
well, let's start with how many times did you remember that you were supposed to be holding the intention?
Couple times.
A couple times. Okay, so that means that there was entries and exits. There was exit and entries. There was already some movement, right? Okay. So this is very important. This is let's hold on to this. Let's remember this. When we get further down the line, we'll talk more about this. But for now, we're going to read the next part, and it's about understanding or not understanding. Also, hold the intention. But this one, it's one of my favorite articles, and it's one that actually I'll refer to quite often. I'll say, hey, remember item 155 from Rabash. So this is item 155 from Rabash, okay? So whenever you'll hear it, believe me, it's going to come up. Someone's going to have an argument in relation to this. And just so you know, these books, if it's in a gray box, it's like even more important, you know? So this one's one of those, okay? So I'll say, remember item 155, this is it, okay? So let's read it. This one, you can let a little bit of the hearing in. I want you guys to really kind of feel this article. But at the same time, still ask yourself, what is the intention? Or even, I'm telling you, at a minimum, even just remembering the fact that you have to have an intention. What is it? Well, in what form? What do I just like have a mantra? Do I repeat something? Do I have a prayer? What is it? Doesn't matter. Just try to hold on to something with the right intention, the right screen, and remember that we're reading in order to attract the surrounding lights, and we're reading it and we're attracting the surrounding lights not because we're doing it individually, but rather through the connection between us. It's creating the right kind of space for this to occur. Okay, so let's read item 155.
Therefore, we must ask, why then did the Kabbalists obligate each person to study the wisdom of Kabbalah? Indeed, there is a great thing in it, worthy of being publicized. There is a wonderful and valuable remedy to those who engage in the wisdom of Kabbalah, although they do not understand what they are learning. Through the yearning and the great desire to understand, they are learning. They awaken upon themselves the lights that surround their souls.
This means that every person from Israel is warranted to finally attain all the wonderful attainments that the Creator had contemplated in the thought of creation, relying every creator and one who has not been awarded in this life to be granted in the next life, etc. Until one is awarded completing his thoughts which he had planned for him.
Sorry. And while one has not attained perfection, the lights that are destined to reach him are considered surrounding lights. This means that they stand ready for him, but are waiting for him to purify his vessels of reception, at which time these lights will clothe the able vessels.
Hence, even when he does not have the vessels, when he engages in this wisdom, mentioning the names of the lights and the vessels related to his soul, they immediately shine upon him to a certain extent. However, they shine for them, yet the illumination one receives time after time during the engagement draws upon him grace from above, imparting him with abundance of sanctity and purity, which bring him much closer to achieving perfection.
Did you read that paragraph again?
Yeah. Hence, even when he does not have the vessels, when he engages in this wisdom, mentioning the names of the lights and the vessels related to his soul, they immediately shine upon him to a certain extent. However, they shine for him without clothing the interior of his soul, or lack of able vessels to receive them. Yet the illumination one receives time after time during the engagement draws upon him grace from above, imparting him with abundance of sanctity and purity, which bring him much closer to achieving perfection.
All right. So the definitions for this section are, when we talk about something like in the book, when we read in the book and it says the upper one, or the upper, even if in reality it's probably very far from our degree, the way we relate to it is that it's my next degree. So if it's the upper, meaning I'm not there yet, but it's my next move. It's my next place that I will go. So the upper, okay? And then when we talk about the lower, when they say the lower ones, or the lower, we're talking about the present degree I'm in, okay? Because there's no degree lower than the current degree I'm in, okay?
That's a scary thought.
Can you repeat the last?
Yes.
sentence?
So when we say lower, or when the book says lower, okay, it's talking about this degree, the current state that you're in, your present degree. But when it's the upper, it's my next degree, my next state, meaning that I'm, like I said, even though it may be far away, but I regard it as if it's my next degree, meaning it's next.
Nobody say something after that.
Yeah, I did it backwards. You missed it. And so with the lower ones, there's no state lower than the current state you are in. It's your present degree. You're in this state. You're the lower one. Later it feels that you get even lower and you couldn't be any lower. Believe me, even that is higher than where you were yesterday or a minute ago. So then there's the surrounding lights. It's the lights that illuminate outside of us. As long as we exist in an uncorrected state. Let's read that again. Light that illuminates outside of us as long as we exist as an uncorrected state. Why is that? Because if you are uncorrected, meaning you still have room for correction, the upper one, the upper degree, wants you to rise. So as a result, what it does is that it compels you to correct yourselves. So it's advancing you. You exist in an uncorrected state, meaning there's a deficiency, there's a lack. So it surrounds, it's light that shines as long as you exist in an uncorrected state. Okay, then there's a light that reforms, and it's the force which corrects the egoistic nature and raises it to the property of bestowal. And then when we read in the book that we're studying Torah, or we're learning the Torah, we understand that it's not the literal understanding of the book. It's not the Torah itself, but rather the light that is in it, because the word Torah comes from the word ora, which is light, reforming light. So we study Torah in order to attract lights that correct our souls. Because
So like aura,
Or
like A-U-R-A, aura, same sound.
yeah. So, but we're doing Hebrew aura like this.
But it's all connected.
Sure. And so like this, where the aura is the light, and then we'll give off the nice aura with an A-A-U after we read it all together, and we attract the light that reforms. And then if you had like these kind of like thermal glasses, you know, you would see that you're like, it's like, you know, like a little smoke or something. I don't know, guys, this is the thing, you know, the Kabbalists tell us we're attracting light that reforms, it's surrounding, it's reforming. What light? Does anyone feel it? Does anyone see it? And then we just read that on top of that, we're reading stuff we don't understand. What's the benefit of this? And so what we see is that we at this stage, it's important just to know this, work with it, trust in the sages, and you'll see if it is true or not. Okay. All right. So we're gonna take a quick break, but we're gonna do some questions and answers first. So I know Jose's got a long list, but we'll start here with.
I just got two quick ones. Number one, is light and intention the same thing?
Is light and intention the same thing? Let's break it down. So, so we have the light. It wants me to enjoy the pleasure. Light is like pleasure. So there's light that's surrounding. Then there's my desire to want to enjoy the light. But then there's an anti-egoistic screen that is between my desire and the light itself. So the light is the enjoyment, it's the pleasure, but the screen is to what extent can I enjoy the intent or enjoy the light with the right intention, meaning that I'm not doing it just to receive it for myself, but rather I'm receiving it in order to bestow it.
Okay, so the intention is the filter then, and the vehicle, the container for the pleasure. The pleasure is the light.
The pleasure is the light, and the vehicle, the container is the kli, which is my hisaron. From the beginning, I wrote it over here. My deficiency, my lack,
Or lack of light.
emptiness, which can come in the form of emptiness, of a sensation that I'm lacking something.
Gotcha. All right, and the last question that I had was, if when we're reading, these books, we're connected to the intention of the author, would it be accurate to say that one of our intentions when reading the book would be to inherit the intention of the author? In a way?
Yeah, it's funny. They asked our teacher, Rav Michael Lanton, they asked him, was there anything that you were ever envious of Rabash, his teacher? Was there anything that you were ever envious of Rabash about? And he answered, I was envious of his ability to hold the intention all day long, like 23 and a half hours. He was holding the intention.
Speaking without letting it go. So that you could speak without letting you know why he's doing it.
And it's like you ultimately it's you saying, do I want to, is the right intention to want to have the intention of the author? Wow, if we would have the intention of the author, that would already be like high degree, because these guys that wrote this are writing from up here. So their intention, their screen, their anti-egoistic masach must be like heavy duty, big time. So, man, meaning that like you can even be envious in a way. It can be the intention that, wow, look at this author who wrote this, who knew so much, and he, oh my God, like even the greatness to the extent that you make the text and the book great before your eyes, and you must discover it. That also creates intention, kli, for that. So that's why it's not so important at the beginning. This term of intention feels so vague, because how can you transcribe to a person what is the right intention? But we do define it sometimes. What is my intention? Okay, my intention is for us to be reading in a united fashion, so we can refract the maximum amount of light between us for our connection and correction, so that all of us will attain Creator. And then by the time you're going on and on about what your intention should be, you see that what you're building is like a thing in the air, seemingly that you must hold like in the back of your mind and not let go to it. The same way like a mother who's with you know this. If your children are at home sick and you go to work, you can be doing everything, but in the back of your mind, you never let go of the thought of your children. And it's like it's there. You're always holding this intention. You're maintaining it. This screen, this masach, that's like it's like above you. It's like you're keeping it. What is my intention? What am I doing? And it's something that can come and go with a woman. You see, I'm telling you, all day you'll be thinking about your sick child at home. It's like no matter who's saying whatever, no matter what you're doing, you never lose the thought of that child. It's always there, and it's like this, the same. but what intention should I have? Today, let's start with what is intention and how we can start to play with this thing. And then with time, we'll see. But what I want to tell you is that how important it is to ask yourselves these things when you're at home and you're reading this stuff and you're preparing. It's all interconnected, I'm telling you. When you're at home and you're preparing, you're reading this stuff, you're watching these clips, what are your intentions? What are you doing for it? What's the point of this, right? But just now you're starting to interact with yourself in a way. You're starting to kind of prod yourself in a way. You're playing with yourself. See what's happening inside of me. And once you can identify more, you'll see that there's a whole world that exists inside of you. Okay. Oh yeah.
Aren't we always in an uncorrected state, or or just different degrees, or is there a point where no, I'm corrected, so I can't receive any light or something?
Gamar Tikkun. The final correction. Remember Gamar Tikkun? You guys remember this term? You should all really, believe me, you should remember Gamar Tikkun, because that means you went through all the corrections, and the whole world's in. So yeah, you're right. It's like it's a constant thing. So much so that that's 125 degrees worth of it. Okay? So if we're down here, there's a long way to go. And I'm always in an uncorrected state until my final correction, until Gamar Tikkun, which means, and what this tells us, because later you'll see this drawing I'm going to do, is all the 5 worlds. They're all here, right? So meaning that the whole name of the game, the whole thing we're learning is precisely on working from an uncorrected state in a corrected state, trying to correct my part of the soul to reach that ultimate adhesion with Creator. And so in that intermediate process, I'm always undergoing the correction process. So it's always a matter of light and vessel and masah. And different, and then from this it breaks down even further, and there's much more that occurs. But the whole spiritual ascent is in that correction process of light that reforms, study of the books of Torah, attracting light, and working with the uncorrected vessels to correct them.
But is Gamar Tikkun, isn't that a collective thing?
Yeah. Remember, there's 2 things, right? There's the collective and the individual, and so there's one's personal Gamar Tikkun, and then there's also the general. But it's interesting because the personal one was really seen in past times, mostly, and even that they're like it was really the authors of the Zohar were the only ones that really attained all 125 degrees, because they had to map the whole thing out for the rest of us. Let's put it like that. They created the whole book for us to be able to do the same thing. And so, yeah, it is a collective thing. So, which pretty much means, and what we're getting at is that we're constantly in this process. So it's not like you can like stop halfway or something. It's like in order to correct yourself completely, you're always working with the lights, the cleaves, and intention and screens and things like that. And really, dude, this book is like this thick, and the whole thing is about that. And it's like, and it's like what Hillel said, which is, sum up for me the whole of the Torah while I'm standing on one leg, right? What does he tell him? Love thy neighbor as yourself. The rest is commentary. Go study. And that's really what this is that this whole thing is how to acquire the right vessels to be able to relate to everyone, to myself, to this world, and acquire love thy neighbor as thyself. The rest is commentary. Go study. Meaning, it's the study that will get you there. So it's like the book is this thick and there's 100 diagrams in the back of it, but all it's talking about is this fundamental thing of light. There's a creator, there's a creature, there's a light between them. He wants you to enjoy, and how can I properly relate to everything correctly? All the other details that we think exist, they're just commentary. So go and study. And when it says go and study, it's attract the light that reforms. Because what are we studying? Why do we study Torah? For the light, for the reforming light. That's what's really doing the work. That's why Kabbalists, we don't memorize these books. There's no need to do it. Our teacher actually, with time, I mean, he's been studying for 40 years, right? But it's like, you see that he knows the sensation of the article. There's a guy, his name is Yaniv C. He actually sits like in the front row, and he does actually. I talked to the guy. He's a cool guy. He has like this database in his brain of like all the articles. Like he can remember where they at and what's the number of it, what they were talking about. And I asked him, I was like, man, is it like a? Because he's really quick about it. Rob will be like, what was that article that talked about this? And then he's like, this one. And he goes, yeah. And then Rob goes on, and then he finds it and then he reads it. Right? It happens like every lesson. So I asked him, I said, man, hey, Yaniv, what is it? Is it like you have like this super database, bro? Like right there that you like search it and you find the article really fast? He goes, you know what? I don't know what it is. He goes, I just like remember all of them, you know? And it's not that he memorized every word, but he knows the articles and things like that. It's so much that he can pull them up quickly. And that's really as far as you really need to go. After that, you don't need to memorize these things. But old school, like yeshiva, like these old Torah schools and stuff, literally, quite literally, yes. And if you read the story of Baal Sulam, it's very good. You'll get some cool insights. But they would take a needle, literally take a needle, and they'd stick it through the book. Okay? And then they'd open it wherever the needle would land. And they would tell you, page 372, paragraph 5, word 6. What's the word? And you would have to say what the word was. But that's to the extent that you would memorize the book. But what they saw and what the Kabbalists tell us is that memorizing something or reading it over and over again doesn't necessarily put it in you or on you. It just puts it up here in your brain, like a nice sophisticated computer. But you don't feel the text. You don't know what's inside of it. You have no like relation to it because you at that point you're just relating it to it on this degree, on a corporeal degree, where it becomes actions, historical documentation of the past, physical things that I need to do with my body. And then there's a whole world inside of it. That's why the wisdom of Kabbalah is called the internality of the Torah. It's the wisdom that's inside the book, because all the books aren't written quite literally. They're written in this language of roots and branches, meaning anyone who doesn't understand how this language works and reads the books, instant confusion and instant corporealizing. So they have no hope for actually extracting what's within. You had 20 questions. Where are they? Come on.
No, actually, there's only 5.
So is that why you can't retain it because
Tanakh is important.
Wait. Our teacher tells us. I don't think I've played this clip for you guys. If you leave class more confused and more like you didn't, more empty than when you came in, it was a good class. But if you leave like, oh, I'm so fulfilled and now my stomach is full and I got everything I wanted from it, and like you're like flying on a cloud or something, like in heaven, then what hisaron do you have? What lack deficiency do you have? You're full. Like I said, those are the worst kind of students that know everything, because there's no room for you to grow. And so then what do? So our teacher tells us, if you leave class confused and with more questions than when you came in, beautiful. You know, it was a good class, because this is in the state that we need to be, is constant wanting to know more, a lack, because we are a lack. We are wills to receive life. So it's good. You don't have to memorize anything, but you still can't shy away from the work. You must do the work. It later becomes an internal work, but not so much about the memorization of the stuff. And that was from the article Introduction to the Study of the 10 Sefirot.
I have a question.
Yeah, let's do Jose.
All right. Let's start from the back. And then go to the first. Why it is difficult if I already have this gene from the mouth? Because if I see him from below, it looks like very hard, to climbing up. But if I see it from above, it doesn't look that way. So why am I not conscious from above? Because it looks like instead of seeing from below, it is better to see him from above. So why?
I don't know. That was your thought. That's what you came up with.
That's one question.
And then you asked me why. In the sense of this, it's like you're telling me what you're saying is that I'm seeing it from my degree, and I'm looking up, and it seems like such a high ladder, like such a high place, so high that it must be impossible to reach it. But if I'm already in a state from above looking downwards, then it's not that bad. You know? Why? Because you've already gone through it.
Unless you have fear of heights.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And don't look down. But
I'm looking more in the process. Like, it's not like I have to, it's like, for example, to build that strong muscle, you have to do this number of repetitions at this number of time. That's the hard way. But you can have a better way to approach the same thing if you consider, if I put my attention and my intention to this world that is about me.
yeah, so I can tell you this. A penny and a penny and a penny will add up to a great sum. Meaning efforts, actions, keep going, keep trying. I can't hold intention. I'm trying. I'm approaching the books. Today I don't want to. Tomorrow I do. Pennies and pennies and pennies like this. The pennies are like the treasure. It's like you're given opportunities, you take them, and you keep trying and trying, and then it adds up to a great sum. And then you'll see that at the time it seemed like very difficult, little hard efforts to collect these pennies. But in the end, you find a whole treasure chest because all of it accumulates, and none of it is lost. Yeah.
Next one. Yeah.
Can you summarize? Can you summarize all four in one big question?
Well, the forest actually easy. I was looking the Torah, so that was light. Then if I reverse and I say Harod, is that darkness?
No. All right. So what you're doing is you're playing with letters. Torah. So it's like and so you want to do like Harut, so like or Hedut, which actually is in another article. No. It's if you want to go into like the Hebrew and the kind of the way the gematria works, it doesn't work. Like you can't invert a word and it becomes the opposite of it.
What about permutation?
Even though it's a reflection?
Yeah, no.
What about the
It
permutation?
has its own. It has its own. It stands alone. Meaning,
That's a lot.
yeah, you can't. Meaning, he's literally talking about inverting the word, like making it backwards, like a reflection, something like this, and then it means the opposite form, like bad or good or evil or something like this. No, it would become its own thing. It would be defined. The Kabbalists would define words from what they write here as that thing itself. So let's say evil or whatever the thing is, Torah. It would be like, boom, that's Torah. That's defined as this thing. That's what it is, right? And then whatever the opposite is has its own thing. So that whenever they say the opposite, like darkness, then immediately anyone who's experienced that darkness, they can bring up that sensation and remember and feel that thing also. Because the word is attached to the sensation.
Well, just because we're on this, what does the T represent in Torah? It's before I represents light.
Oh, the T that it's added? So this is a good
I'm
question.
into those alphabet things.
No, I understand. This is why I mentioned what I mentioned earlier about going into the words and analyzing each word, because literally, if you wanted to, and in our we're reading it in English, right? And so it's a little bit different. But if you look at like the Hebrew letters, and if and some people want to kind of break it down, like each letter and what does it represent? It's not so much the letter itself that has anything. It's in the makeup of the letters, right? So how like it would be the addition of them all, right? That would make it happen.
It's a frequency, would you say? Of all
Yeah, but even then, you want to be careful with these things because there's there's so much material out there that's like that is from this degree that claims to understand what those things are. You want to be careful because it can really cause a lot of confusion. So in essence, what as a rule, generally, Kabbalists like we don't mess around with that stuff because we find that there's no need for it. Yet, when I have heard my teacher say that that if you can and you're reading, he said to the people that were reading in Hebrew, he says, see if you can go to every letter and feel what each letter represents and the feeling that arises with the definition of each letter. Okay, and then it becomes more of a sensational game that you're playing. Not so much like a letter is always this thing. Rather, it's kind of like a song or musical notes on a scale, in the sense that depending on the article and a lot of other conditions, mostly you and what's happening inside of you. Today the T feels like this. Then tomorrow the R, but tomorrow the T feels like this and like that. But it's always changing. But what doesn't change is the way the author wrote it and how he imbued it, in the sense that it's specifically representing those spiritual states. Exactly the states and degree that he was in, and he captured it on paper. Later, when you go back, today it may feel this way, that way, in all which ways, but if you go back to the state of, let's say, Hanukkah, the state of Hanukkah, when the authors wrote about Hanukkah, the Maccabees and the Greeks, what it's talking about, the Greeks being the will to receive pleasure. That they're in a battle against the Maccabees, which is the Israel, kind of the bestowal, and then these lights that happen between them. So meaning that there's all of them have kind of like it's like a line that they drew, it attained a certain degree, it got captured, that's what's written. So you're down here and you're playing with like the little car, like a child, because you don't have the ability to drive the adult car. So from your degree, you see it lower and you feel it lower. But when you actually are on that degree, then you can look through the books and navigate precisely what the sensations were that those people, these Kabbalists, that were in this upper world were specifically feeling.
So for me, and what really brought me here was the words within the words, the 72 names of God, not being able, trying to figure them out on my own through books. Okay. And it does give me this sense of feeling when I break it down that way, at least at this point. So I feel like that's important, and you're telling me it's not.
Yeah, one soul shall teach him. Meaning what's good for you now and what is fulfilling you is probably what you should explore. And then there will come a point where that also perhaps won't fulfill you anymore. And then you're looking for something else. And then you continue. And then you'll see that you're in this ever-long process of unfulfillment, which is the hisaron, with mild sensations of enjoyment and pleasure and fulfillment in between. But it never is the complete fulfillment.
Is it not a step to it, though?
Yeah. So continue and do it. And if you should probably get the books in Hebrew if you want to.
I don't know Hebrew well enough. I need a Hebrew class. I'm not Jewish.
So
I'm listening to you trying to get to put that part of it together.
But what I'll tell you is this: with good advice, not between like friends now, like it. You'll spend a few years doing this, and then eventually you'll see that it kind of you could have bypassed all of that, and you could just like kind of get to the point, which is the fact that
I never would have gotten here without that.
Exactly. So it's good, and he wouldn't have gotten here because of this reason or that reasons, and so all of it is important and necessary, and we don't actually reject or negate anything. It's all perfect. Even the criminal who does a criminal act, he's important in everything. All of it is good. Which is why you won't hear us, B'nai Baruch, ever say bad about any other organization, any religion, or anything. Because they're all necessary and perfect and beautiful. Why? Because it's all creator. It's all good. He's the one governing you and doing all this stuff to you and brought you here and made you interested in all this stuff. Just like he made me interested in Star Wars, But at the end of the day, the Kabbalists tell you, hey, the Gematria portion of it is it's very complicated and it'll rack your brain. And take all your time and consumption for little results in the that you can. But if you're drawn to it, then do it. But if you can add what the Kabbalists advise, which is the proper way to study, which is more focused on so much more drawing the light. It's the light that will correct you, even though there's a lack of understanding. Because the understanding, actually, the mind is still hardwired into the ego. So the fulfillment process of me knowing, thus I enjoy, is also an egoistic vessel. It's still not one that that actually is in the spiritual. So the sensation that you receive is a chemical that's emitting from your pleasure receptors in the mind. Not that it's an actual spiritual sensation. Which is why a lot of these things that occur, like not just because you're saying I get fulfillment from figuring it out, then continue, but at the same time, if you want a nice big spiritual fulfillment, it's seeking, like, doing what the Kabbalists advise.
So for me, when I was in a place and I just happened to pick up in the reading, it was part of something else, and it mentioned 72 names of God, and it was, I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but Vagman Bayat, which is water. The first time in my entire life that I resonated, not pleasure or knowledge, I resonated with the spirituality of what the intention of God is. So for me, I don't know if it's what you're saying is that the pleasure and fulfillment, it had a spirituality that I've never ever felt before.
Yeah, you want me to explain it?
Yes.
Water is the degree of Bina. Okay, Bina is visto. Okay, you touch something which is a reshimot or a reshimot that's inside of you. You touch it. There's pleasure and fulfillment in bestowal, in water, in these letters. There must be something there. Let me investigate. Did you get the whole cup full of water? No, you got a little taste.
I got a hurricane full of water.
So this is how this is a good example. Hey, but this is how the reshimo arrives. It's a taste. Now you have there's flavors. Now that you can there's tamim, it's like the flavors. Later you get the whole flavors, but now it's just the taste. Like we were saying, now you have something to measure. Now I want this. It's like the creator puts this carrot and you're drawn to it. Now you seek it. But you, of course, why? Because we're egoistic and we will only move unless we receive pleasure.
So you're saying it wasn't a spiritual moment? You're saying it was an egotistic moment?
I'm just saying.
I felt spiritual, but I guess that's egoism again.
We read earlier that one will want to attain it in completeness and without any imagination. He will want to know it in its complete fulfillment, in all we read it earlier, in meaning that is that eventually you can call it whatever you want, right? Everything is spiritual, actually. This whole world is spiritual. We're already in the spiritual world. We just don't perceive it, right? So, but nowadays the word spiritual also is so perverse, and so it's tough to know what is a real experience, what's a spiritual experience. They're just experiences, right? But what the Kabbalists can tell you is that the only experiences that we can say are actual ones that are not like written in abstract names are the ones that others have also experienced. And then you can actually give them names because you validate it against 9 other people that are around you and you all experience the same thing together, thus making it a mutual spirituality, not an individual spirituality. Even though later you may continue and you may be on degree 20, but your friend's on 50, then it is what it is. But the point is that the spiritual, like a true, what the Kabbalists say is a spirit. What the spiritual is collective and not individual, because we are a collective soul. We exist in others. Our soul is collective. It's not an individual soul.
So can you intend to send out what you feel individually to the whole, and will that make it collective?
Yeah, this is actually the work of the Kabbalists also. Eventually, hey, why do you think I'm teaching? Why do you think I'm standing here? By the way, my whole house is upside down. I got guys working at it. My wife is there, my kids, there's dust everywhere. I should be home, right? But I'm here. Why? Because eventually I see that there's no use in getting this whole thing for myself. I need to give it out. And so I need to pass the light through me to others. By talking to 7 fine people will correct the whole world. Maybe, I don't know, but it's what I can do and my participation in the whole thing. I can't go out and tell everyone, hey guys, there's the most greatest, beautiful thing, the treasures of the king himself are here before you, and we're missing it because we're so focused on ourselves, and no one would hear you. They don't have the ears, the vessel, to properly receive it. So a person who has the vessel can receive the fulfillment for it. So he must have a lack, a hisaron, a deficiency. And so with time, we begin to relate internally also. These are all probably internal work. I relate internally to the world also. But I realize that I can't solve all their problems because it's the creator himself who's doing it. He's the manager. I'm just like a rag. I'm just hoping to get admission into his palace, if he'll allow me, but under what conditions would he allow me? Under the conditions that I know or don't know or I think I know. There's conditions to enter the palace of the king of the palace. And so if you meet those qualifications with the right law of the equivalency of form, you're admitted. And are you already promoted to the high priest, and they'll now move you to surely when you arrive they'll roll out the red carpet and say, go up to the palace of the king, enter into the high court with all the top ministers, and they'll let you govern. No, it's like there's a whole system of creation that's built that's above us, and we're like on the negative degree. And so with time, you want something, you see that the deficiency itself, the hisaron, the lack, is the spirituality, because this is how the whole system is built. He wants you to want him, meaning that the system is built off of a lack, a desire. But so whatever you're fulfilled with, do that. Whatever it is, do that. That's why we say there's no coercion in spirituality. You don't have to agree to any of this stuff, actually. And so much so that we just read that you're going to be reading this for quite some time and not understand any of it. How can you measure if you're succeeding or not? What parameters can you possibly use to say this is effective or not effective? But at least we're trying to teach you how to have how to tune your receiver in a way where you're sensitive enough to begin to feel the internal changes that occur within you as you relate to the text in relation to some light that I'm supposed to be drawing that I don't see, nobody sees, but yet somehow it's working on me. And so all this stuff and the sensations I feel, and believe me, all this stuff with time becomes very much of a vivid thing and less of a theoretical thing. At the beginning, it's very theoretical. We're learning a new science, so it's all theory. But later, it really is practice. And it's with others, which is why we should get to the workshop soon, because you guys need to discover spirituality between you, and you can only do it between you. So, what are the more questions we have?
If you want, we can
3 more.
After the break.
All right, let's do it after the break. Let's watch a clip before we go on the break.
Kabbalists wrote the books either for us prior to attaining the spiritual world, in order for us to draw the reforming light, and after we, by it, come to the spiritual world, for us to attain in a practical, tangible way what's written about. The book never tells us about something theoretical, which I need to accept with my mind, but rather only with my feelings. The desire is the key. The desire is the matter. And the mind, the brain, just needs to help and accompany the desire. We long for feeling. All of the brain, the mind was given just in order to organize all the means to reach the feeling. Hence, the study is not for the sake of learning, but for the sake of inviting the reforming light.
All right. Next exercise, let's see if during the break you can hold the intention. Okay? Ask yourself, what is my intention? When you put that donut in your mouth, what is my intention? When I'm talking to my friend, what's my intention? So as you're in the bathroom, ask yourself the same question. So that's your task, that's your homework for the break, okay? You have 5 minutes. Let's say 3 minutes. I want to give you enough time to get up and stretch.
Would that be a fluid in the body?
Fluid?
Yeah.
You mean like a chemical, like in the brain?
No, like something you kind of feel like in your belly a bit. I can't explain. Like
Desire?
like not necessarily like hungry, but something that kind of comes along
Like deep
right
down.
next to hungry.
It is in the belly, bro.
Yeah?
You'll see. Big desire, big belly. That's the qualifications to be Calvinist. Of course, man. Think about it. Haven't you ever been like you really wanted something so bad, and it's like te revuelve the guts, you know? You like want it.
Yeah, I feel it in there. It's like something.
It's like it's there, you know.
And when you say intention, you go like this. Is intention like in the back of the head?
I'm not doing anything. It's in the back of your mind because it's like back here, like you know, that's where you keep it. You make a place for it,
Like
right?
a little point.
Yeah, exactly. But
It's like a cup.
yeah, more like a screen, like a masaj.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, it's the screen.
yeah, exactly. So it's like you want to know the people who says, why do these guys wear the little kippah, you know, the little hat, you know, the Jewish guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's more really just represent some sort of like screen, you know, between the upper and the lower, you know, something like this. Should we all now put them on? And no, because it's a physical aspect of it, but it's like there's a spiritual thing where you always in the back of your mind, you keep the thought of spirituality, the creator, the friends. What is my intention? You know?
I get it. So that's why they wear it, so they can physically remember that, so they can hold that intention.
No, they wear it because it's a cultural, religious thing. But like the why, the roots of you know, for a Kabbalist is more of this. But also if you didn't grow up with it, don't put one on you. It's the point is like
I get you.
You get what I'm saying? It's like somewhere in the back of your mind. Maybe I'll do it over here. But it's like you you never let go. And if you can, you know, keep an intention. What is it? What's going on? You know, why am I doing things?
It's a tool for those who understand what it's for.
Yeah, you gotta flex your spiritual muscles. You know, you gotta. Oh, now I have to. On top of all the other things I do, now I have to remember something all the time. It's like, yeah, try it out, see what happens.
Gotcha. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Bro, and today I didn't tell that many stories, and we're already like 15 minutes over, roughly. Did Louis sleep?
Yes. Yeah, things to do. I eat a donut with the intention of enjoying eating the donut.
I think Sheila and Marilyn have had a little problem. So Sheila forgot first. Marilyn's gonna come back. Maybe I can meet her halfway with it. She needs it.
Yes, whatever you need. We will wait for the combination. Is that donut? Yeah, you're good. You already had two?
No, I actually got 3 donuts and lemonade right before I showed up.
Really?
It's all for that. I'm already
You already donated it up.
Hey, is that a cigar? Yeah. I know you got me.
And that's a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah, I can already see that. Is that like any spiritual reason? Just for pleasure?
You like cigars?
I heard people smoke cigars live longer.
Huh?
I heard cigars smoke live longer.
Really?
Yeah, like all the oldest people that have cigars, but they don't know.
There's funny stories about Ravash and when he had smoked for like 60 years or whatever, and then all of a sudden he was like with the doctor. And, this is before there wasn't like there was no studies about smoking's bad or whatever. So the doctor just like he wasn't feeling good one time. And the doctor just threw it out there and goes, "Well, stop smoking," And so he did. And so after so many years of smoking in Israel, there was this thing on repeat. And so he was coughing up a storm at night when he was sleeping. He was coughing and coughing and coughing. And of course, it's old school Israel. There's no AC, right? So they have windows open. So the neighbors, like from the other buildings, like yelling, "Shut up!" And like Ravash, like on this really high spiritual degree, he like gets up and starts yelling at the guy. It's hilarious, man. So
you can still like get mad and stuff, right?
Of course, bro. I'm telling you, none of that stuff, bro. Everything is like beautiful. You see it.
I don't know, man. Cause sometimes I be going around the day and just like arguing with my girlfriend. I feel like I'm doing so wrong.
I mean, look. Of course, with time, you're not as like we said, agudo. What is it? Sharp. Coarse. The coarse. Remember we said coarse, also sharp. Yeah. You become softer. Like with time, but the stone, softens. But bro, if it's your nature to explode, you explode. It's not gonna change, bro. It's you.
That's what's up.
Yeah, don't worry. But of course, but then after
do I gotta apologize anytime I yell at somebody?
Look, you just gotta be, you gotta not, hurt anybody. But sometimes, me too. My mother was in the hospital, and it was already like her 5th time in the hospital or something, and I couldn't deal with it anymore. And I started like yelling. I was like, "Do yoga or something, like be more, exercise, and you're so pessimistic. Like, think at least try to think about this. Something like me. That's how it's like. But then afterwards, it's like, you can really harm, so you just came back, that's my mom, she loves me, but sometimes you can avoid it, But to think now that because you study Kabbalah, you're going to be like some saint or something, or also like Zen, no, nothing can bother me, like, I don't care how many times you cut me off in the road, like, I love you like myself. Absolutely not, you're you live in this world, Sorry, I'm on this side of the speaker, so I don't hear. What's up? Look, I only know about it very small. I never learned it because it's not a thing that I just know it exists, and I know the little bits that our teacher Rob said about it. But yeah, honestly, bro, I'm not a scholar. So I just know that the same that it's there, it exists. In the 12 years of us saying, we never once pulled out a book on Gematria and learned about it. Like there was never any. Yeah, so I mean, that's why whatever research you do probably is already more than what I know. No, because it exists and it's a thing, and it's really kind of the root of how the books are written. But to now go all the way to that root, it's over. I'm sorry, in the 12 years we've done it, we've never discussed Gematria or gone into the subject or anything. It's like we just every now and then a word our teacher will say, you know, this word is rooted in this other word, and you'll kind of explain it, but it's, you know, but other than that, we don't have books on it, on the subject.
Oh, I just took a few.
I just know y'all got a lot of food.
I would love to have I went to a Christian church that last one time. They were very specific. It was this way, no other way. Then they put the Jewish tradition down. And I was asking him for a friend who was going to come to me about thank God he's not here. So I said, well, this is how it's So, but yeah, I would love to. I would love to. Class. Yeah. Because for me, I'm still looking for I guess I have to go that far back to get there. Yeah, I love the words in the words because it does fulfill me, but it leaves me questioning. And then it resonates with me on a level that makes me able to go on. Otherwise, if there's no resonance, yeah, and that was it. I read that one and I went, oh my God, this first time in my entire life. I'm comfortable with this name of God. Yeah, I mean, most people aren't, but for me, for whatever reason, there are reasons that I doesn't make me feel good. So the positive bad is just like, you got to look at stuff like the side of God and it just felt. Yeah. It's like it clicks all of a sudden, right? Yeah, where before you were struggling trying to go along, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, But, you know, when you talk about so really, we're talking about. Yeah, right, yeah. Right, exactly. And that's what I'm trying to do, actually, my intention is to be open to this, like, show me whatever it goes. And
So that's right. It's my life.
we don't have to accept it.
If I do something like that, like Simon just still working, but the reason also
Yeah.
resonates now. No, I would be glad to do that if I finish the last time. Spiritual.
All right, I think we might get going. Here we go. All right, ladies. You all right? No, it's okay. We're beginning.
I didn't, sorry. You don't. Maybe Jose would like.
Plenty over there.
The other Jose.
I'm cool for that.
Okay, friends. We're gonna do something a little bit different today. We won't have the workshop because a good workshop needs time. You know, you need time to talk to each other. We've gone a little over, and what's interesting is that I tried not to speak. I tried to speak slower, right? Maybe that's why time passed so fast, because I'm speaking slower, even though we managed to get all the material in. And really, this is the way it is. It's sometimes we're able to kind of get through the whole thing, sometimes we're not, right? But really, the workshop is the most important and practical thing about it. So maybe one of these classes we just do workshop the whole time, right? Like I don't even lecture. You guys just, you know, discuss between. Maybe we'll see. But so you decide. What do you guys want to do? Do you want to do? We can do a little more Q&A. We can do the workshop, or you know, because it is 9:30. Is that clock right?
I've sort of assumed that this class.
It's right. It's the same as mine.
Because that's where it's been going the last 2 times.
I know. I'm trying not
That's,
to.
I mean, I'm okay with it. That's what's in my head. It was the test. When I get home at 11.
What do you guys want to do?
Well, what about the?
Let me stop this music.
Question and answer. And also for the workshop. So if we reduce the workshop like half,
Okay, so you're saying let's do workshop, but let's not do all the questions. We'll do just like 1 or 2.
but also the question and answer. Because like
And
going
Q&A.
home without the answer.
We're going home to finish it.
Exactly. Sometimes the no answers is just as actually more than me telling you everything. Okay, so what have we decided? We're gonna do workshop. A little bit of workshop, yeah. Okay, let's do it. So please come and let's sit in a circle and let's start the workshop. So as you know, the rules. Let's go over them real fast.
Around the table, no one is more
Carrie, my
everyone is equal and very important. We don't reject or negate, but only collaborate. The real solution won't come from knowledge or verbal perfection, but only from our connection.
Okay, so everyone's equal, very important. We have to listen to each other. It's important to look each other in the eyes, to talk to each other. You're sitting with human beings. We need to keep a warm environment between us. So listen to your friends. You know, they're speaking wonderful things. Also, we speak briefly. Okay? Briefly, especially tonight, we don't have a lot of time. Let's let everyone talk. Let's get to the point. 2 sentences, 3 max. And give everyone an opportunity. We already know each other pretty well. We don't need too many backstories. Let's talk about the question. I try to add to my friends, always adding. I don't negate and I don't argue. Okay? No one knows the right answer. We're all just equal. But we focus on the connection between us. Let's connect between us. It's good. All right. First question. Why is it difficult for a Kabbalist to describe to us the upper world? What solution did they find for this problem? Why is it difficult for a Kabbalist to describe to us the upper world? And what solution did they find for this problem? Whoever wants to begin, I'll leave it up to you.
Kabbalists found it difficult because it's all about the upper world is just feelings, there's no real words. And of course the solution was the language of the roots and branches, which is what we just learned, right? So that's the answer, I think, to the question.
I think it's very hard to describe the light that's coming down in words. So they tried to make a language to make it easy.
And I agree with that. Because we're at the effect level and not at the causal level, it's hard for us to understand. So without the language of roots and branches, there would be no way for us to really connect.
Right, and then that connection that we establish between us is actually what helps us attain what these Kabbalists attain in order to be able to reveal it to others.
I think we can't describe it because it's beyond our perception. And the solution, yes, trying to create a language, but I think we're searching for the solution perhaps in that language.
It seems like we may not have any solution.
That's really how I feel. There is no solution.
I mean, I'm being low. I'm trying to understand the opposite. Like, trying to understand someone who is highly between the two.
I think it's difficult, maybe because in the upper world, everything is the same. Everything is this one thing, and in the lower worlds, it's not. It doesn't seem that way, so it's really hard to describe that. And yeah, the solution is for them to go to the cause of the problem as opposed to the problem itself, which is the effect.
That's our rule here, because we're all here to find answers. And that's what we're doing our best to do. We can only do the best we can do. But we have to keep concentrating on what is our intention for being here. I think it's more complicated than what we thought our intention was to be here. I think that we were led here to be taught. We didn't just decide, I'm bored with this knitting, I think I'll go learn Kabbalah. Not like that. This is much more complicated, much more intimate.
To me, it's kind of like learning a foreign language. First, you have to learn a few words, and after you get that, then a few sentences, and then a few paragraphs, and pretty soon you're learning the language, but it's going to take us a while to climb the ladder.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it is really just blending the theory with the practice. Like, I think, this would kind of be the practice, like you said, we're learning about the connection. And, as John said, love your neighbor as yourself, and the rest is commentary. So I guess, what we're doing right now is learning to love each other, learning to connect with each other, and I guess that's what the purpose is.
That's exactly the practical part of it is trying to establish our connection where, because that is the only place where the light is revealed, is in the connection between us.
And I was thinking of the connection before you guys brought it up, and I think the connection is we bounce off of each other too, just like light bounces off of things, and something we couldn't figure out, and then it bounces off from something else, and then it generates it to us and more comprehension.
Yeah, I think about the connection. I imagine like the carbon is the most mineral that is dark. But when they have all carbon together, yeah, they form a diamond. When they're all together in that fusion, and for a long period of time, it becomes so nice, so fine, so pure, and that's because this connection between those elements, and it seems like impossible to listen, but we are already there.
Let's let's ask ourselves the question of the night. What is my intention? I'm sitting here with these people. What is my intention? Why am I here? What are we trying to do? Also, listen to your friends, but see what your intention is while we're doing this. Next question. In order to understand Kabbalistic books, we need to have the perception of the spiritual reality. Why then did the Kabbalists write these books? What good are they to us who don't have this perception?
Like you were saying, the books, we get our information from the books, and it would be really hard for us to map out the path towards Mark the Kuf. So that's why we have the books.
Yes. I think that the Kabbalists did learn a lot, and they're bestowing their knowledge to us. They're practicing bestow.
I think that when the Kabbalists bestow the knowledge onto us, that's also their desire and their intention. So I guess what I'm trying to get from the books is I'm trying to inherit their intention.
Right, and they teach us like we teach children, and we don't understand these books, but just like that, when a child develops, you give him a car, he doesn't know what a car is, but by playing at this, though, he starts getting a sensation.
Yeah, and that's basically because when I was reading, I was asking that question. Why are we reading this if we don't understand? But I think to me, it's that on some unconscious level, there's something permeating into us, and we just have to be open to receive that, even though we don't quite understand that we're getting it.
And yeah, I guess also the connection allow us to absorb something that we are not aware, and we in this world we need a lot of collaboration in the sense of uniting as a group, because it feels like we're trying to understand, to have a glimpse of this reality, but by looking and the other's perspective. If he shows something, you show something, and in the end we maybe agree that we also the same thing, and come up with something that it is like truth for us.
I think I'll go on the same train of thought. I think the Kabbalists, they didn't envision the printing press and stuff like that. So when they wrote the books, they imagined, I'm assuming, people coming together and reading these books and talking about them, doing workshops, and like you were saying, bounce off, light and etc. So
And I think eventually you start to get to a higher level without even realizing that you're there because you're getting that light from above that makes something click inside of you and know what you're reading is so. Not on a level that's, I don't know how to put this into words, but I'm sorry. It's too hard for me to put into words. I know what I want to say, but it's not coming out. But hopefully that's going to change as time goes on.
For us to love thy neighbor as thyself, we have to learn about our neighbor. So by doing this, we're learning how to love each other. We're learning each other and what they need as well as what we need so that we can perform that bestowal.
When it comes to, loving our neighbor as ourselves, I think one of the requirements to really loving each other is being able to correctly be able to communicate with each other. I think that when people have a conversation, it reminds me a bit of a verse in the Bible I read that says, I know that in Spanish, I don't know how it goes in English, but there's 2 or 3, in my name, that's where I am. So when I see us gathered around the table discussing Kabbalistic concepts, it's like every time we go around the table, it's like we just start to understand certain concepts more. It's almost like we're building an invisible machine, and I'm curious as to where it leads to.
I think it leads to a beautiful intention to draw a reforming light and to think of the others.
Next question. Kabbalistic books have a special force that can adapt us to the upper reality. How can we extract that special force when reading Kabbalistic books?
Well, I feel all books have a special force and energy, and I feel that the physical carries something within it that just has an energy that's a loving, wonderful energy. So maybe you could say that Kabbalistic book has maybe a little bit more of that energy, but I feel that from all books.
Yes, I feel that depending on the book, the energy may increase. If we're talking about something sacred, holy, it's more powerful energy. It's like love. It's so powerful. And the book it brings an emotion. So it's like it's like a movie. You're inside the movie, and you see all, and you're enjoying it. So the book gives you that in a way. It's a kind of imagination, but we cannot use imagination. But it's the feeling that arises in you.
I think through the right intention, it would definitely help to get the most out of these books and treating it as a science, just like you would with any book. You would try to get into the author's mind, trying to see what their intention was, also what they're trying to teach you, what they're trying to get across to you, and take it serious, as you should with the how I know. So,
I agree with everything that you said. And you just have to let it flow. I think just by repetition and just by hanging in there, it gets clearer and clearer. But in the beginning, it's like mud because we're all starting out new. It's like being in kindergarten, playing in the sand pile. But eventually, you know, we'll learn to work together and get good things from each other and grow.
I think about Torah, for example. I think about toward the light when I think of Torah, because I think it's the Creator's way of telling us about Himself so that we could draw closer to Him and understand Him. Love thy neighbor as thyself.
I agree with that. I think that the special force that we're drawing in from the upper reality would be light. And, you know, like we discussed earlier, I think light would be pleasure. And for us to access that pleasure, we have to have a certain, you know, as you said, intention. And I think, you know, that's the key.
Absolutely, the intention, and always, for now, we need to let them move us emotionally. We can try to understand them intellectually, like we do all the other books that we've read before Kabbalah. This is a whole different thing. We have to let them come into us in a different way, and of course, the intention is everything.
Next question. Let's say we succeeded in drawing this force. How then will this force affect us? What kind of results can we expect?
There's a lot of questions there. It sounded like you had the answers.
Well, it's like once you draw this force, then the whole situation you will see with a different eyes. It's like I just took my glasses and then I say, wow, this is the reality. You know, so you will have attained that level where you can help others, you know, in bringing them to see the same the force.
you want to go now?
This is flippant, but if we succeeded in drawing this force, what I would personally like is not to have to come back in the next life in this world, but another better place. So that's ego. I'm just saying it on my part. But
I don't know. I don't feel like, I don't know. I mean, if we knew, then why would we need to first in the first place? I don't know. I mean, I guess generally it would affect us by giving us a more real sense of reality or something like that.
I think that if we succeeded in drawing this force, then it will bring us closer to God because we begin to understand why and how, and all the questions that we have are going to be answered if we can draw down the force between us. You know, everybody has different questions because we're all different basically. They may think differently, but we're the same person. Same soul is what I'm trying to say. We're all the same soul. We're all the Clipper, okay? And if we're all the Clipper, then we have to all come together to be whole again, and then we can approach the Creator and that with that strength. We all need to strengthen ourselves. And that's the correction.
If I had the force, it would make it easier for me to climb the ladder, go to a higher degree for the next life if we have to go through another life. And it would affect me in that I would be able to bestow more easily because I would have more understanding.
If I succeed in drawing in this force, then I think it would affect me, of course, you know, the revelations to higher understanding, but you know, what I'm most curious about right now is the word sensations, because I've heard that, you know, a couple of times, and I was talking, you know, I was talking to John a little bit earlier, and we were talking about how, you know, desires and rebellion. Sometimes when you have to make a decision, you're just trying to, you know, go with your gut feeling, I guess. So I guess that when I absorb more of this force, I think it's gonna change a lot of my decisions at a gut level. Like I feel like I'm just gonna behave. You know, I'm just gonna act differently, and that's gonna, of course, create better results for my life.
I think Juan was talking about Rishimo. I think that drawing the light would help to bring out these new Rishimos that you need to play out, and how those play out, how they manifest in this world, I really no way of knowing.
Well, when you said if I have the force, I thought of Star Wars. I said, but I'm wondering if that's, you know, so many things that come out in different ways, and I'm wondering if in Star Wars that was the force. We took it as the force, but maybe it's this force.
I believe it's the same idea. You know, it's the force is God. So also the regions of the we are trying to combine. So we rely ourselves, and others will be attracted to ourselves because the soul, they will start showing something in you. You become the bestow, almost not anymore the receiver.
Okay. So, in one word or a sentence, describe what am I leaving the meeting with, or what am I taking with me?
Confusion.
Yeah.
Confusion, but also learned a lot. So.
Like an appetite to learn more.
Understanding Jacob's ladder.
Hunger.
What did you say?
Hunger.
Oh,
hunger.
Mm-hmm.
There's some.
Yeah, thank you.
Because we have the same one.
Thank you. Yes.
Intention.
Desire to be open to receive, to remain open to receive.
I would say, thinking about 3 words: attention, emotion, and thought.
All right. So, to summarize the lesson, authentic Kabbalistic books only talk about the spiritual world, not our world. Even though we can't understand them yet, when we read them together, we draw a force upon us that adapts our desires from reception to bestow. Okay? This is the preparation for the next week. Everyone's receiving the emails, right? I think we already fixed the last problem, which is Sheila's. We fixed that today. Okay, good. So again, friends, this is the last class for registration. It closes today. If did you already? Is there anyone you need to speak to, or no? Everything's covered. Lovely, beautiful. So, friends,
Question
do
for
this one.
semester 2 or
No, for this one, yeah. It's like if you guys all registered and everything, but if there was like a new guy here, we would have to register if we want to continue. Yeah, because we close it. That's it. We fuse this group together, and we're a spiritual group that's advancing forward. So congratulations, friends. You traversed it.
I'm looking for Hisaron over here.
Hisaron?
They say hunger and.
Hisaron, that's what it's called? Hisaron.
Hisaron is hungry too.
I erased the other one. Hisaron, deficiency. Yeah, the Hisaron. The hunger, the longing.
While they're talking about food and stuff.
That's another one too.
So I'm gonna, I don't know, did I make up the question that
It's good to, speaking of questions, friends, there was one thing I wanted to show you guys. Like, let's say, okay, so this link, it takes me to an article, and the article is in our teacher's blog, right? So I encourage you all to actually put in stuff like let me show you. I thought of all of you this week. Lightman.com/blog. Because this resource will answer literally any question about any topic you ever had. Okay. Like this article here is when opportunities do not coincide with desire. So let's say you have a question about gematria. You type in gematria, and when you get past the AdWords that Google adds, there's an article that our teacher wrote specifically on what is gematria. Gematria is the language of emotions. Okay, and you can come in here and read it. I want to know about gematria. What is it? Okay, you guys all had those questions, so here it is. In quantum physics, there's an established size, stable and changeable constant size that is called the fine structure constant, blah, 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 so on and so forth. My point is this, use this as a resource throughout the week. Any question you have about anything, look it up, and it's here, okay? Lightman.com/blog. Okay, I'm telling you all the questions you guys had last week. I went in here and I started putting them in, and I was like validating my understanding with what Rav wrote, and he adds so much even more that I could never ever pass on to you.
So is it basically saying that we can't really understand gematria until we reach the top?
All right, let's read it. The answer is gematria cannot be considered without attaining the essence of the phenomenon it describes. So I suggest attaining the essence of the phenomenon, comparing them with our corrected nature, and then the knowledge of gematria will be revealed to us. So like this, see? Very simple. Everything is here, guys, okay? So use this blog. I promise you, you will love it, okay?
I'm gonna check that one.
Yeah. Lightman, yeah, .com/blog.
You're sending that link to
Yeah, I'll send it.
Be careful, Glenn.
All right, thank you guys. Have a great week.
Thank you. See ya.
Well, I have to look up the introductory. So this is like it's a blog, but it was someone wants to join.
Thank you so much.
Brand new
I should be coming here
February,
They gotta come like next round, right? But usually we do it like twice a year, so like in the spring sometime. It's when you guys are younger, right? So it's probably like around the spring, like sometime, and then we do it again in the evening, or in the evening, at the end of the year. Yeah, yeah. It's good to have you.
You?
No, I want to sign it.
Okay.
It was like he's gonna email her.
I
know.
Maybe let's see.
But I don't always get it.
Bro, it is what it is, man. I might. I'm getting work. They might call me. Or something on Wednesday.
See you next time, huh?
Make that back.
Yes, sir. I will. I got my notes right here. And I got my picture.
All right, thanks, Francis. Dude, it's, you know, we record. Speaking of recording, let me stop the recording.
Neighborhood, Florida.